Samantha Price took her first real breath in 43 years. The air burned her lungs like fire. Her muscles screamed as she forced them to move. Every joint in her body felt like it was filled with broken glass, but her mind was sharp. It was always sharp. That was what made her dangerous. A young medical technician helped her stand. He looked barely old enough to shave. Samantha realized with a strange feeling that this boy had probably not even been born when she went to sleep. "Easy, Commander," he said. "You have been under for a long time. Take it slow. How long?" Her voice came out as a rough whisper. 43 years. 43 years. An entire lifetime for most people. For Samantha, it felt like closing her eyes and opening them again a moment later. "Is it bad?" she asked. The technician hesitated. She could see the fear in his eyes. "They are calling it an extinction-level threat." Samantha nodded. She had expected nothing less. People like her were not woken up for small problems. They were woken up when the world was ending. Where are the others? "The entire Blackchapel program is being reactivated. General Cooper is waiting for you in the briefing room." Blackchapel. Samantha had not heard that name spoken aloud in decades. It was the program that did not exist. Every government denied it. Every record had been erased. It was the program that had created the most effective killers in human history. They had called themselves soldiers. Everyone else had called them monsters. The briefing room was deep underground, protected by layers of concrete and steel, and systems that would kill anyone who did not belong. Samantha walked through the security checkpoints without thinking. Her body remembered the routines even after all these years. Inside the room, she found 47 people who had changed the course of human history. They sat in silence, their faces showing no emotion. They had learned long ago to hide what they felt. Feelings got in the way of the work. Samantha recognized many of them. There was Kevin Drake, a man built like a mountain, who had once held a defensive position for 6 days without sleep against an army. There was Lisa Martinez, small and quiet, whose work in psychological warfare had broken entire enemy command structures without firing a single shot. There was William Burke, old even back then, whose tactical genius had turned impossible defeats into stunning victories. And there were the younger ones. The soldiers who had been recruited during the final years of the last war. They had been forged in that terrible fire and had come out as something more than human. Or perhaps something less. General Daniel Cooper stood at the front of the room. He had aged terribly in the decades since Samantha last saw him. His hair was white. His face was lined with wrinkles. But his eyes were the same, hard and cold and utterly without mercy. "Thank you all for coming," he said. A ripple of dark laughter went through the room. As if they had any choice, Daniel activated the holographic display. The room fell silent as they watched images of the victory. The creatures were massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin like armor. They moved with the speed and grace of predators. The display showed them destroying worlds, cities burning, ships exploding, bodies falling. The coalition has been at peace for so long that they have forgotten how to fight, Daniel said. They have ships and numbers, but they have no warriors. No one willing to do what needs to be done. They came to us because they had no other choice. Rules of engagement? Kevin asked. His voice was calm and flat. Whatever it takes to win. The coalition has given us complete control. No oversight. No restrictions. They do not want to know what we do. They just want the victory stopped. Do they understand what that means? Lisa asked. No, and by the time they do, it will be too late for them to change their minds. Daniel paused and looked around the room. His eyes moved from face to face, taking in the men and women he had sent into darkness so many times before. "I will not lie to you," he said. "This will be bad. The Vecturi are unlike anything we have faced. They are strong, fast, and completely without fear or mercy. They have never lost a war." "Neither have we," William said quietly. "No, we have not. And that is why humanity buried us. They were afraid of what we became in order to win. They were ashamed of us." Daniel's voice grew hard. "But now they need us again. The galaxy needs monsters. And we are the only monsters humanity has." The ship that would carry them to war was called the Acheron. It was black as empty space, shaped like a blade, and covered with weapons that the Coalition had banned centuries ago. It had been built in secret, maintained in secret, and crewed by people who lived in shadows. Samantha stood on the observation deck as Earth grew smaller behind them. She watched the blue and green planet shrink until it was just another point of light among the stars. She tried to feel something: connection, love, home. But there was only emptiness. That was the price of what she had become. The ability to kill without hesitation required cutting away the parts of herself that might hesitate. Compassion, mercy, the ability to see enemies as people rather than targets. She had made herself into a weapon. And weapons did not feel. Thinking deep thoughts? She turned to find Kevin standing behind her. His face was unreadable, but she had known him long enough to see the small signs of tension. "Just wondering what we will find out there," she said. "Something to kill. Same as always. Do you ever think about what comes after? If we win?" Kevin was silent for a moment. "No point thinking about that. We are not built for after." He was right, of course. They had been designed for war. War was where they belonged and probably where they would die. There was no place for them in peace, but somewhere deep inside, in whatever small part of her humanity remained, Samantha found herself hoping. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time the monsters could find something like peace. Maybe this time they could finally rest. The Acheron slipped into faster-than-light travel, and the stars became streaks of light around them. They were heading toward the front lines of a war that would decide the fate of the galaxy, and humanity's buried monsters were ready to fight once more. The Galactic Coalition had existed for 11,000 years. It was a union of 47 different alien species spread across 6 spiral arms of the galaxy. They traded with each other. They talked to each other. They had forgotten what war felt like. Peace was all they knew. Then the Vecturi came. They appeared from the empty space between galaxies. No one knew where they came from or why they were so hungry for destruction. Their ships numbered in the millions. Their soldiers knew only one thing: how to kill. In just 3 years, they swallowed 18 Coalition worlds. Billions of lives turned to ash. The Coalition did not know how to respond. Their armies were for show, not for fighting. Their weapons were old and unused. They had evolved past violence so completely that they could not understand what was happening to them. They held meetings. They debated. They wrote strongly worded letters. And while they talked, more worlds burned. High Arbiter Velkesh was the leader of the Coalition Council. She was tall and thin, with 4 purple eyes and silver skin that reflected light like a mirror. She had led her people through 1,000 years of peace. Now she watched her empire crumble and felt something she had never experienced before: fear. In desperation, she turned to the youngest member species. Humans had only achieved space travel 40 years ago. They were still considered primitive by most Coalition standards. Their seat in the council chamber was at the far end, barely visible, barely tolerated. But Velkesh had heard rumors about these humans. Dark rumors. Stories of violence and war on a scale that made other species uncomfortable. The Coalition had dismissed these stories as exaggeration. Now Velkesh wondered if they had been wrong. Humans, she said, her voice echoing through the great chamber. We have heard stories about your past. We called them propaganda. We called them lies. But now we must ask. The stories of your violence, your wars, your ability to destroy. Are they true? Ambassador Catherine Bell stood slowly from her seat. She was 63 years old, with silver hair and tired eyes. She had spent decades trying to make humans seem peaceful and civilized. She had worked so hard to hide what her species truly was. Which stories? She asked quietly. All of them. Any of them. We need to know if your species can fight. Catherine was silent for a long moment. Around the chamber, representatives of dozens of species watched her. Some had wings. Some had tentacles. Some floated in special tanks filled with liquid. But they all had the same look in their eyes. Desperate hope. The coalition welcomed humanity on one condition, Catherine said. You made us bury our past. You called us violent, primitive, dangerous. You made us ashamed of what we were. You demanded we prove we had evolved past our barbaric nature. We were wrong, Velkesh said. The words seemed to hurt her. We were fools. Please, help us. Catherine looked at the great star map that hung in the center of the chamber. Red marks showed the worlds the Vectory had taken. The red was spreading like blood in water. Soon it would reach the core worlds. Soon there would be nothing left. I need to make a call, she said. The communication was encrypted 17 times. It bounced off satellites and relay stations across half the galaxy before reaching its destination. A facility buried deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth. A facility that officially did not exist. A man named Daniel Cooper answered. He was 70 years old, with a face like rough stone and eyes that held no warmth. Those eyes had seen things that would break ordinary people. They had seen what humanity was capable of when pushed to the edge. Ambassador Bell, he said. I was wondering when you would call. You know what is happening? We have been watching. The generals are already talking about options. But they want to know if the coalition is really asking for help. They are begging Daniel. I have never seen anything like it. They are completely helpless. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Do they understand what they are asking for? Do they have any idea what we buried? No, and I do not think they want to know. They just want to survive. That is the problem with peaceful species, Daniel said. They forget that peace is not natural. It is bought with blood. It is maintained by people willing to do things the peaceful folks cannot stomach. Can you help them? Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. It was the laugh of a man who had stopped finding things funny a long time ago. Ambassador, we never stopped being ready. We just got better at hiding it. Give me 72 hours. Deep beneath the mountains, doors began to open. These doors had been sealed for decades. The air that rushed out was stale and cold, preserved from a time that humanity wanted to forget. Lights flickered on in chambers that had been dark for 40 years. And in those chambers, people began to wake up. They were kept in special pods that stopped time for the body. Stasis, the scientists called it. A kind of sleep that could last forever. These people had volunteered for this sleep because the world no longer had a place for them. They were the soldiers of the last war. The last war had been the most terrible conflict in human history. It had nearly destroyed the species. It had killed billions and left the earth scarred and broken. When it ended, the survivors made a promise. Never again. They would become peaceful. They would join the galactic community. They would evolve past their violent nature. But some leaders understood a dark truth. Monsters do not stay dead forever. Someday, somewhere, humanity would need its killers again. So they preserved them. They hid them away. They buried them beneath a mountain and tried to forget they existed. Now the monsters were waking up. Daniel Cooper walked through the facility as the stasis pods opened one by one. He watched the soldiers stumble out, confused and disoriented, their bodies struggling to remember how to move. But their eyes were sharp. Their minds were clear. They remembered who they were and what they had been trained to do. They were killers, the most efficient killers humanity had ever produced. They had given up their humanity to become weapons. And now the galaxy needed weapons. Daniel stopped in front of one particular pod and watched as the person inside opened her eyes. She was a woman in her 30s, though she had been born over 70 years ago. Her name was Samantha Price, and she had once been called the Angel of Death. "Welcome back," Daniel said. "We have work to do." Samantha blinked the stasis sleep from her eyes and looked at the old man standing before her. She did not ask questions. She did not complain. She simply nodded and said 3 words that sent a chill down Daniel's spine. "Who do we kill?" The Coalition believed in overwhelming force. When they decided to attack the Vectory 4 base on the moon called Kethru 7, they gathered the largest fleet they had ever assembled. 300 warships carrying 40,000 soldiers from 6 different species. They had numbers. They had firepower. They had the backing of the most advanced civilization in galactic history. They had no idea what they were doing. The Battle of Kethru 7 lasted 4 hours. When the shooting stopped, the Coalition fleet was scattered across space in burning pieces. 36,000 soldiers were dead. The Vectory had not lost a single ship. Admiral Yethkal, commander of the Coalition fleet, sent one final message as his flagship broke apart around him. Fire was everywhere. His crew was screaming, but his voice was calm. "We cannot fight these things," he said. "We are not capable. May the humans forgive us for what we have asked of them." Then the transmission ended, and the Admiral joined his crew in death. The Acheron arrived 3 days later. The Vectory had already moved on to their next target, leaving behind only 2,000 soldiers and a few support ships to hold the moon. Commander William Burke gathered the team in the briefing room. He pulled up images of the moon and the enemy positions. "Standard Coalition approach would be to wait and gather information," he said. "We are not going to do that." The plan was simple in the way that all their plans were simple. A small team would sneak onto the surface while the Acheron kept the enemy ships busy. Once on the ground, the team would find the Vectory commanders and kill them. Then they would signal for pickup and leave. Simple, clean, efficient. "We are calling it Operation Grave Tender," Burke continued. 20 operators. Full weapons load. Radio silence until the job is done. There were no questions. They had all done this before, in different wars against different enemies. The details changed, but the core remained the same. Find the enemy. Kill the enemy. Move on. The insertion pods dropped from the Acheron like falling stars. Inside one of them, Samantha checked her weapons one final time. Rifle, pistol, knife, grenades. Everything was in order. Everything was ready. The pod hit the surface hard. The door blew open, and Samantha rolled out into darkness. The moon had no atmosphere. She moved in her sealed suit, her boots making no sound on the rocky ground. Around her, the rest of the team emerged from their pods. They formed up without a word, communicating only through hand signals. Then they began to move toward the enemy base. The tunnels beneath the surface were dark and cold. The Vectory had taken over a mining facility and turned it into a military base. They thought they were safe here. They thought no one would dare attack them. They were wrong. Lisa Martinez was the first to make contact. She appeared from the shadows like a ghost, her blade opening a Vectory's throat before it could make a sound. The creature was massive, nearly 3 times her size, but it died just as easily as anything else. The body slumped to the ground. Purple blood pooled on the floor. The team stepped over it and kept moving. They encountered more Vectri as they went deeper. Each one died quickly and quietly. The humans moved through the tunnels like death itself, leaving only corpses in their wake. The Vectri were strong. Their armored skin could stop most weapons. They were fast enough to dodge gunfire and strong enough to tear a human in half. By all rights, they should have been unstoppable. But humanity had spent its entire existence fighting things bigger and stronger than itself. They had developed tools and tactics and a kind of creative brutality that no other species could match. Where the Coalition saw an impossible enemy, the humans saw a problem to solve, and they solved it very efficiently. The command center was at the heart of the base. The team reached it in less than an hour, leaving 47 Vectri bodies behind them. The door was thick and heavily reinforced, but Kevin placed charges at the weak points, and it blew inward with a satisfying crash. Inside, the Vectri commander waited for them. It was huge, even by Vectri standards, its body covered in ceremonial scars that marked a lifetime of victories. It turned to face the humans, and its mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Humans," it said. The translator in Samantha's helmet turned the alien clicks and growls into words she could understand. "We have heard of you. The young species with the violent past. We thought the stories were exaggeration." Samantha raised her weapon. They were. The reality was worse. She pulled the trigger. The battle for Kethro 7 ended 6 hours after it began. 2,000 Vectri soldiers dead. 3 enemy ships destroyed. Human casualties 0. When the Coalition received the news, there was only silence. They had lost 40,000 soldiers and accomplished nothing. The humans had lost none and achieved total victory. High Arbiter Velkesh stared at the reports for a long time. Then she contacted Ambassador Catherine Bell. "How?" she asked. "How is this possible?" Catherine had read the same reports. They described violence on a scale that made her sick. But she kept her face calm and her voice steady. "Because you asked for soldiers," she said. "And we sent you monsters. Our monsters. The ones we have spent generations trying to forget. The ones we buried because we were afraid of what they said about us. Are they all like this? The Black Chapel operators are the best we have. The most controlled. But there are others. Millions of others. If you want, we can wake them all up." Velkesh was quiet for a long moment. Catherine could see the conflict in her 4 purple eyes. Horror at what the humans had done. Hope that they could do it again. "What will happen to the galaxy if we wake them all?" Velkesh asked. "I do not know. But I know what will happen if we do not. The Vectri will kill everyone. Every species, every world, every hope of civilization. Is that better?" "No," Velkesh said finally. "No, I suppose it is not." She gave the order. And across Earth, in bunkers and facilities hidden from the public eye, millions of soldiers began to wake up. The galaxy had asked for help. Humanity was sending everything it had buried. 6 months into the war, the Vectri Empire learned what fear felt like. Their advance, which had seemed unstoppable, ground to a halt. Supply ships vanished without a trace. Commanders died in their quarters, killed by enemies they never saw. Soldiers began to whisper about the demons in human form that stalked them through the darkness. The Vectri had conquered 1,000 worlds before they reached the Coalition. They had destroyed species so completely that not even memories remained. They believed themselves to be the ultimate predators. They had never met anything like the humans. General Daniel Cooper commanded the war from the Acheron, which now served as the flagship of what the Coalition called the Human Expeditionary Force. But the soldiers who fought under that flag had their own name for themselves. They called themselves the Buried Samantha Price had become a legend. Her unit, designated Grave 6, had broken the siege of Kalos 4 by holding a defensive position for 72 hours against endless waves of Vecturi attackers. They had killed over 3,000 enemy soldiers. They had not lost a single member of their team. The coalition media called her a hero. They did not understand what that word meant to someone like her. Heroes did noble things for noble reasons. Samantha did terrible things because she was very good at them. There was no nobility in the violence she unleashed. There was only efficiency. But late at night, when the fighting was done and the bodies were being counted, she sometimes found herself thinking about the future. What would happen if they won? What would happen to her and the others? The coalition would not want them anymore. They would go back to being embarrassments, reminders of humanity's barbaric past. They would be buried again, hidden away so that polite civilization did not have to think about them. And maybe that was right. Maybe that was what they deserved, but it still hurt, and whatever part of her could still feel pain. The war continued. World after world was liberated from Vecturi control. The enemy's territory shrank with each passing month, but they were far from defeated. Their central command, located on a fortress moon called Nexus Prime, continued to coordinate their forces. As long as Nexus Prime stood, the Vecturi could rebuild. They could regroup. They could fight back. The coalition declared Nexus Prime untouchable. The defenses were too strong. The garrison was too large. Taking it would cost too many lives. William Burke disagreed. "We do not take it," he said, during a strategy meeting that lasted 18 hours. "We break it. We kill so many of their leaders that the survivors cannot coordinate anymore." Admiral Catherine Cole, a coalition officer assigned to work with the expeditionary force, shook her head. "The defenses make that impossible. 3 layers of orbital stations. A shield network on the surface. 200,000 soldiers." "Correct," Burke said. "That is why we are not going through them. We are going around." The plan was called Operation Reckoning. 50 operators would hide inside a ship designed to look like Vecturi debris. They would drift through the defensive perimeter, playing dead. Then they would activate their ship, make a run for the surface, and land. Once on the ground, they would fight their way to the command center and kill everyone inside. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was exactly the kind of thing the buried specialized in. Samantha volunteered. So did Kevin and Lisa, and 24 others, whose names have become synonymous with impossible victories. They packed into the small ship and began their drift toward Nexus Prime. For 3 days, they floated through space, silent and still. The Vecturi defenses scanned them multiple times. Each time, Samantha held her breath. Each time, the scan passed them by. On the 4th day, they activated their engines and made their run. The anti-aircraft fire was incredible. The sky lit up with weapons designed to destroy ships much larger than theirs. 4 of their insertion pods were hit during the descent. The soldiers inside died instantly, but 46 made it through. They hit the ground running. Literally running, sprinting across the rocky surface while Vecturi soldiers poured out of bunkers to meet them. The humans did not stop moving. They fired as they ran, each shot perfectly aimed, each round finding its target. The Vecturi outnumbered them by nearly 4,000 to 1. It did not matter. The humans cut through them like a knife through water. By the time they reached the command center, only 18 of them were left. All of them were wounded. Samantha had a deep gash across her face and a bullet lodged in her shoulder. Kevin was limping from a wound in his leg. Lisa had lost 3 fingers on her left hand. None of it mattered. They breached the outer defenses in 40 minutes. The inner defenses in 20. The command chamber itself took less than 5, because by then the Vecturi had realized what they were facing and were trying to escape rather than fight. The supreme commander of the Vectary Empire was old. Nearly 400 years had passed since his birth. He had led his people to victory in countless wars. He had never known defeat. He knew it now. Samantha found him trying to reach an escape pod. She shot him in the back, and he fell. Purple blood spread across the floor as he struggled to turn over and face her. "What are you?" he asked. Samantha walked toward him, her weapon steady despite her wounds. "We are what happens when you push humanity too far. We are the monsters they made to fight monsters like you. Your violence will consume you," the Supreme Commander said. "It always does. You will destroy yourselves. Maybe, but not today." She pulled the trigger one final time. The fall of Nexus Prime broke the Vectary Empire. Without their central command, the remaining forces fragmented into competing factions. They fought each other almost as much as they fought the humans. The war that had seemed impossible to win became a series of cleanup operations. Victory was certain. It was only a matter of time, but Samantha found no joy in it. Neither did any of the other buried. They had done what they were designed to do. They had killed more efficiently than any soldiers in history. And now they faced the question that had haunted them since they first woke up from stasis. What happens to monsters when there is nothing left to fight? The war officially ended on a day the Coalition declared a galactic holiday. Every species celebrated. Every world held parades. The Vectary surrender was complete and unconditional. Their empire was dissolved. Their remaining population was scattered across a dozen worlds under Coalition supervision. Humanity was celebrated as the savior of the galaxy. Speeches were made about courage and sacrifice and the triumph of good over evil. Monuments were planned. Songs were written. The buried watched it all from the shadows, as they always had. Samantha stood on the observation deck of the Acheron, looking down at the planet below. Fireworks painted the night sky in colors she did not have names for. Even from orbit, she could see the celebrations in the streets. Daniel Cooper found her there. He looked older than ever, worn down by a war that had demanded everything from him. "You should be down there," he said. "I do not belong down there. None of us do. The Coalition wants to give you medals. All of you. They want to make you heroes." Samantha shook her head. "We are not heroes. We are weapons. Weapons do not get medals. They get put back in storage until they are needed again." Daniel was quiet for a long moment. What if they are not needed again? Then they rust away. Or they get taken apart and turned into something else. She turned to look at him. "Is that what is going to happen to us? Are they going to bury us again?" Daniel pulled out a datapad and handed it to her. "That is what I came to talk to you about. The Coalition Council has voted. They have created a new position, a permanent military advisory role attached to the Coalition Defense Force. They want people who understand fighting to help them build a real military." Samantha looked at the datapad. It described a training program that would teach Coalition species how to defend themselves. It would take decades, maybe centuries, but it would create soldiers who could protect the galaxy without becoming monsters. "They want us to teach them how to fight?" she asked. "They want you to teach them how to be soldiers without losing their souls. They figured if anyone knows the cost of that, it is the people who paid it. And if we refuse, then you go back into stasis, back into the mountain, back to being buried." Daniel's voice softened. "But Samantha, we both know that is not a life. That is just a slow death. This is a chance to be something other than weapons. Something more." Samantha looked at the celebration below. She thought about all the things she had done, the people she had killed, the person she had become. She thought about the monster that lived inside her. And she thought about what she could become. If she was willing to try, "I will talk to the Others, she said. The buried gathered one final time in the briefing room where they had first learned about the war. 47 people who had become legends, who had saved the galaxy, who had done things that would haunt them forever. Samantha told them about the offer. She told them about the alternative. And then she said something she never expected to say. I think we should take it. The silence was heavy. We have spent our whole lives being weapons, she continued. Being things. Tools to be used and put away when the job was done. But we have a chance now to be something else. To use what we know to help others instead of just hurting them. To maybe find some kind of peace. We are not built for peace, Kevin said. His voice was flat, but there was something in his eyes that might have been hope. No, we are not. But maybe we can learn. Maybe we can teach others so they do not have to become what we became. Maybe that is the point of all this. Maybe that is why we survived. Lisa Martinez spoke up. The people down there celebrating, they do not know what we did for them. They do not know the cost. And I think that is right. They should not have to carry that weight. But someone should know. Someone should remember. That could be us, William Burke said. We could be the ones who remember, so they do not have to. One by one, the others spoke. Some were hesitant. Some were doubtful. But when the vote was taken, it was unanimous. None of them chose to go back into the darkness. 5 years later, the first class of Coalition Defense Academy graduates received their ranks in a ceremony attended by representatives from every species in the galaxy. They were not warriors like the buried. They were protectors, trained to defend without destroying, to fight without losing themselves. Samantha stood at the back of the hall, watching them receive their assignments. Her hair was gray now. Her body showed the wear of years and wounds. But she was smiling. Kevin found her there, as he always did. You look happy, he said, sounding surprised. I am happy. I think for the first time in my life, I actually am. Because of them? He gestured at the new graduates. Because of what they represent. The galaxy asked for monsters, and we came. But now they have something better. Something we helped build. Soldiers who can protect without destroying. Warriors who can fight without losing their souls. She paused. We were necessary, but we were never meant to be permanent. We were just a bridge. A bridge to what? To a galaxy that does not need monsters anymore. A galaxy where people like us are old stories, cautionary tales, legends from a darker time. She laughed softly. That is the best thing we could have done. Making ourselves obsolete. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled too. You know what? I think you are right. I think that is exactly what we were for. The buried never fully became part of Coalition society. They could not. They were too different. Too shaped by violence. Too marked by what they had done. But they found a place on the edges. As teachers and advisors and keepers of memory, they made sure the galaxy never forgot what it had taken to save them. And they made sure the galaxy never had to create monsters like them again. Because in the end, that was what they had always wanted. Not glory. Not recognition. Not even survival dot, just the knowledge that the violence ended with them. That they were the last of their kind. And that the galaxy was better for it. The old soldiers stood watch in the shadows, and the young ones protected the light. And across 1,000 worlds, a galaxy that had almost died learned to live again. This was the gift the monsters gave. This was their peace at last.